All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're zooming way in to look at one of the most incredible structures in all of biology, the plasma membrane. You might think of it as just a simple bag holding all the cell's stuff together, but nope, it's so much more. It's a dynamic, super smart gatekeeper that is absolutely essential for life. So, let's go unlock some secrets, shall we?
So that's the big question, right? What exactly makes this cellular skin so smart? How in the world does it decide what gets to come in, what has to stay out, and how it communicates with everything around it? Well, we're about to find out. To really get how intelligent this thing is, we've got to understand its design first. So let's pop the hood and break this incredible barrier down piece by piece. Okay, now this blueprint might look a little complicated at first glance, but I promise we can break it down. By the end of this, you'll know all the key players here. You've got the foundation, that's the phospholipid bilayer. Then you have all these proteins embedded in it, a few bits of cholesterol scattered around, and those little carbohydrate chains hanging off the surface.
You know, every great structure has to have a solid foundation. And for the plasma membrane, it all starts with one very special little molecule. A molecule that kind of has a split personality when it comes to water.
Say hello to the phospholipid. It's got this head part made of glycerol and a phosphate group that is polar, which means it absolutely loves water. But then it's got these two fatty acid tails that are nonpolar and hydrophobic. They literally fear water. And this simple love-hate relationship with water, that's the whole secret to the entire structure.
So when you drop these molecules into the watery environment of a living thing, something amazing happens. They build themselves. The tails desperately try to get away from the water, so they all turn inward and face each other. At the same time, the water-loving heads arrange themselves to face the water, both on the inside and the outside of the cell. And just like that, boom, you've got a perfect two-layered wall, the phospholipid bilayer.
But look, a wall is just a wall, right? What makes the membrane smart is the specialized crew of other molecules that are embedded within it. Let's meet the team that really brings this barrier to life.
First up, we've got the proteins. If you think of the phospholipids as the bricks in our wall, then the proteins are the doors, the windows, and even the communication antennas. They're the real doers of the membrane, handling most of the active jobs.
And these proteins aren't just floating around doing nothing, each one has a super specific job. Some of them are receptors, they catch chemical signals and pass messages to the inside of the cell. Others are anchors, linking up to the cell's internal skeleton to give it its shape. And maybe most importantly, you have the transport proteins. They form these tiny tunnels that carefully shuttle nutrients in and waste out.
Next on the crew list is cholesterol. Now, I know cholesterol can get a bad rap sometimes, but inside the plasma membrane, it is absolutely essential. Think of it as the fluidity manager. What cholesterol does is it wedges itself right in between those phospholipid tails. Its whole job is to stop the tails from packing too tightly together, which would make the membrane all stiff and brittle. By keeping them spaced out, cholesterol makes sure the membrane stays fluid and flexible, which is totally vital for the cell to survive.
And finally, sticking off the outer surface of the membrane, we find carbohydrates. The best way to think of these is as the cell's unique identification badges.
These little carbohydrate chains, which are often attached to proteins forming glycoproteins or to lipids to form glycolipids, create a unique name tag for every single cell. This is how your immune system, for example, can tell the difference between your own cells and some foreign invader. They are absolutely fundamental for cell-to-cell communication.
So, we've met all the individual players, the phospholipid bricks, the protein doors, the carbohydrate ID badges, but here's the thing. They don't just sit still. The real magic happens when you see how they all move and work together in this dynamic, always changing environment. And this brings us to a really central concept in cell biology, the fluid mosaic model. This model describes the membrane not as a static, rigid wall, but as a fluid sea of phospholipids. And in the sea, all the other components, the proteins, the cholesterol, they're like little boats just constantly floating around and shifting their positions. This creates a constantly changing pattern, or a mosaic, on the cell's surface. And it's this fluidity that lets the cell adapt, change its shape, and just function properly. Okay, so now that we get the structure, this dynamic fluid mosaic of molecules, we can finally appreciate its most important jobs. So what does this super smart gatekeeper actually do all day? Job number 1 is maintaining homeostasis. It's a bit of a sciencey word, but all it means is keeping a stable, balanced internal environment. Pretty much every single function of the plasma membrane, from being a boundary to controlling transport, is all in service of this one goal, keeping the inside of the cell just right for life.
And the main way it maintains homeostasis is through a property called selective permeability. This is probably its most critical function. It just means the membrane is, well, it's picky. It lets some things pass through easily, but it blocks others completely. You know, a great way to think about it is like a fish net. The net lets all the water pass right through, but it catches the fish. The plasma membrane works in a really similar way. It lets small, uncharged molecules like water and oxygen slip right through, but it blocks bigger molecules and ions. It's this selectivity that gives it total control over what gets in and what stays out.
So, let's circle all the way back to our original question and put all the pieces together. Why is this intelligent gatekeeper so incredibly important?
The answer is really clear now, isn't it? The plasma membrane forms that crucial, flexible boundary. It maintains homeostasis with its selective permeability. Its proteins and carbs allow for communication, support, and identity. And maybe the biggest point of all, every single known living cell, from the tiniest bacteria to the biggest blue whale, has one. It is truly fundamental to what it means to be alive.
And that leaves us with a pretty profound thought to chew on. If this much complexity and intelligence exist in just the boundary of a single cell, what does that really say about the mind-blowing complexity of life as a whole?
Okay, just to make sure that key idea really stuck, here's a quick question for you. Which model describes the phospholipids as a sea where other molecules can just float around? Is it A, the selective permeability model, B, the protein transport model, C, the fluid mosaic model, or D, the phospholipid bilayer model? Got your answer? The correct one is C, the fluid mosaic model. That sea of phospholipids is what makes the cell's gatekeeper so dynamic and so alive. Thanks for exploring the cell's amazing boundary with us today.